All right. Everyone, welcome today. We're glad to have you with us. And at this time, in accordance with the Open Meetings Act, the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, and the public notice published by the Texas Secretary of State, this in-person meeting of the Commission on State Emergency Communications is hereby called to order on January 28th, 2025 at 10 a.m. For the last time, Patrick, was that correct? Good. We are a officially convened meeting. Our first order of business is to certify that we have a quorum, and at this time, it looks like everyone is present with the exception of Bobby Mitchell. Do I hear a motion to excuse Commissioner Mitchell?
Motion to excuse?
There's a motion. Is there a second?
May 2nd.
There's a motion and a second. It was almost a third over here. Oh, Clint. Oh, sorry. Oh, God. Look, we nearly had a Patrick, get ready. This is your day. Would somebody like to amend their motion to include Clint Sawyer in that as well?
Washington amends their motion to include Clint Sawyer.
All right. Second.
Second.
Second still stands. All those in favor say aye. Aye. The opposed say no. The ayes have it. Those members are excused. At this point, we'll move on to future meeting dates. Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. Right now, we have a quorum for both March 26, 2025 for our next meeting date, and then have on the books May 28th, 2025 for the one after that. If either of those dates do not work with you, you can just get with Karen offline, and we can ensure that there's quorum.
Super deal. At this time, if anyone wishes to comment on a particular agenda item, you can do so by being recognized to speak, or you can save your comment until that specific agenda item is called. And I know we do have some guests here on some things today, so there'll be a point for that. But if at this time, if there is any open public comments, there being none, we will move on and take up our agenda, beginning with agency operations, and we'll go back to Andrew again for that.
First up, we have quite the recognition today in Patrick Tyler, who has announced his retirement to the agency at the end of this month. So we have some goodies here for him, as well as a plaque from the commission itself and a flag that was flown over the Capitol. So I'm going to go ahead and read the announcement from the commission here. So the Commission on State Emergency Communications and Patrick Tyler, in recognition and appreciation for 20 years of meritorious service to the state of Texas. The state of Texas is grateful for your service in the administration and implementation of statewide 911 service and the Poison Control Network. So.
All right, before we get too far into this, I do know we have some people that are wanting to make comments today, and I think, Commissioner Muskrat, you had some particular comments as someone who used to work with Patrick, and we vetted that, Patrick. It was good. I mean, before we... Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I only fairly recently became a Seaside Commissioner, and as such, most of the 19 years that I've worked with Patrick has been a co-worker and colleague. My following comments are from that perspective. Words cannot express how much I have thoroughly enjoyed working with Patrick during his time with the Commission. Patrick and I have worked together on many issues going back when he first started with the Commission in 2004. One of those early issues was trying to incorporate voice over internet service providers into the 911 system. One of the more recent issues in 2023 was the FCC rulemaking on the next generation 911 issue, for which Patrick materially helped NASNA in drafting that petition that prompted the FCC to initiate the rulemaking. During the last 2 decades on many matters and issues, Patrick has questioned and argued with me when I needed to be questioned and argued with, and hopefully I did the same for him. As a side note, along those questioning and arguing, my wife always knows when Patrick and I are on the phone together, because I get extremely loud and excited, and she could hear us all the way across the house. But the result of such conversations and cooperative efforts has always been a better work product that further the interest of the Commission and the 911 community, and also a growing friendship between us. Patrick has represented the commission with the highest integrity and persistent determination to protect the commission and Texans seek assistance during their time of crisis. Having worked at the commission myself, I know how difficult it can be being the sole attorney in a small agency. In addition to dealing to cutting-edge issues that the commission has to deal with on technology, there's the day-to-day issues, public information, procurements, federal grants, an ever-growing list. I know that I could not have done Patrick's job with the diligence and excellence that he has done for the past 2 decades, and for that I very much admire him. I believe that the entire Navajo community owes Patrick much gratitude for his hard work and significant contributions. Patrick, my friend, has been truly an honor and a privilege to have worked with you these 2 decades. I sincerely hope you enjoy your retirement and whatever else may come next. Thank you.
Kelly, are you out there? Kelly Merriweather, our past executive director, had a few things she wanted to say as well.
Okay. Is that on now? Okay, thank you. Kelly Merriweather, I believe you gave me the title of Executive Director Emeritus. Former Executive Director of the Commission. And thank you for having me, Commissioners and Patrick. I feel funny I'm not looking at you, but maybe it'll help both of us stay dry-eyed. I first met Patrick when my predecessor, Paul Millett, asked me to meet him before he made a final decision about bringing Patrick onto staff. And we met for lunch at Z Tejas on 6th Street. They just tore that down. And of course, there was the usual get to know the team banter. And I told him there was never a dull or boring day at CSEC. No 2 days are the same. But what I remember mostly about our first conversation, Patrick, is that as a candidate, you asked me more questions than I did you. And so it began, and so it continued. Many years later, amidst a peppering of those kinds of questions and a discussion that was so intense and lengthy, I told Patrick that if I ever have to be deposed, I want him to prepare and represent me. And I still do. And I say that with love. Commissioner Muscat has highlighted Patrick's legal acumen and contributions. No doubt, Patrick has contributed greatly to the 911 body of work in the regulatory arena. Richard mentioned VoIP and Next Generation 911, but I would also add Carey's Law and a long list of riders that have occasionally been added to CSEC's appropriation bill pattern. And those can be pretty tricky sometimes. And while many, if not most, attorneys are one and dones when it comes to helping craft regulations and policy, Patrick, as a general counsel at a small agency, has had somewhat of a unique experience of also being on the inside, so to speak, and having to implement those directives at the agency where things really get done. It is a skill to write policy, but it takes another skill set to implement it. And Patrick has always contributed and was eager to assist with both. These are all the things that the public sees, but what I've seen and others have seen over the years is that Patrick has a keen sense of right and wrong and cares deeply about people and pets, and he is compassionate as he is hardworking. What I've seen in Patrick over the commission has to do. Commissioner training, oaths of office, open agendas. Patrick was of office, open agendas. Patrick was there and ready, willing and able to help, as he did always. But now it's time for hard-earned and well-deserved rest, Patrick, and much more golf, I hope, in your future. You should be very proud of your career and accomplishments. Patrick, I want to thank you for always, always, always being there for the state of Texas and for me. Job well done. Thank you.
Kelly, when you mentioned personal financial statements, Andrew wrote that down up here because that does come up at about May, and, you know, just FYI. I want to say a little something about Patrick today, too. I was appointed to the commission not that long ago either, November of 2004. And when I was doing my commissioner orientation, Paul Millett, who was the executive director at that time, said, we're going to bring in an in-house counsel. And part of that was, at the time, the agency had several lawsuits they were dealing with, which related back to some very large fund balances, which had never been appropriated, and some cost recovery issues. While the agency was technically represented in those cases by the Attorney General's office, there was a feeling by this commission that we needed someone to help guide and steer and be our advocate in that process, as opposed to just someone from the Attorney General's office working on that case. And that's how Patrick came to be. We had those cases, and then we moved on to prepaid wireless, which I know is another favorite. In those, though, we had to fight some things that were pretty tough and had a lot of issues there. But Patrick really brought a dogged determination and a tenacity to that. And that was very important for this program, for a lot of our other partners out there as well, as we dealt with those issues. But that's how I came up with the name of Patrick Bulldog Tyler. Over the years, Patrick's job has changed and cultivated in a lot of different ways with a lot of things that have come to this agency. And I think sometimes when we've had certain issues come up, a lot of us sometimes may feel like Patrick may be just a tad bit long-winded as we go through some of these things. But the flip side to that is it's because he goes through every single permutation of a scenario and a situation. And that has taken enormous burden and responsibility off of every one of us sitting up here, the fact that he has gone through that. And we do appreciate it. When you first came on board, Patrick, I wasn't real sure about you because you're from Oklahoma. And but his lovely wife, who is not here today, Diane, is from Midland, so there's a redeeming quality there. So we look past that. His job has not been easy. In a lot of situations, he has been the front of this agency in some difficult situations, and that doesn't always get you invited to a lot of birthday parties and Christmas celebrations. But I can tell you this, no one, no matter how long-winded you might have ever gotten, has ever questioned your commitment to this agency and its well-being. And that's an amazing thing. When Andrew first came on, as any good executive director does, and there had been some talk about you looking to retire, one of the things he said was, I'm kind of trying to look at this and see if it makes sense to continue to have a general counsel position. Now, we're going to continue to have that, so it's not a problem. But any good person would look at those sorts of things. And I think Andrew can tell you, when he first said that to me, I said, no, we've got to have that. But that's the true testament, Patrick. You've done such a great job here in this position that position has become integral to this commission and to this agency. I appreciate you, sir, and you will always be my Patrick Bulldog Tyler. Thank you. Commissioners, we'll open it up.
I'd like to just say, Patrick, Mr. Tyler, your knowledge and your intelligence is without question, but to do it with style and grace, the way that you do, shows your heart and commitment, and I've always been in awe of that. So thank you for your service.
Absolutely. Knowing how you worry about everything, every little thing, and everything has to go back over 16 times makes me feel very good about you taking care of us and being so lighthearted with us and such good humor all the time. It's just the cherry on top. Thank you, Patrick.
Patrick, thank you, especially when I was a freshman commissioner coming in you and I had a lot of discussion over the law, and sometimes maybe even didn't have to do anything with CSEC. I was like, I heard this statute, or what's going on here? And you always had the answer, not only, on our statutes, but other statutes. And if you didn't, you always looked it up and told me or advised me. So I think when Commissioner Beecham said guidance, I think that's a perfect word to describe you. You have guided us in the right decisions. And I thank you for everything that you've done, our personal friendship, and I wish you all the best in your retirement.
Patrick, I wanted to thank you for your servant's heart. You've always approached this as a calling. The term nerded out is popular in culture, and I will just say that these two together, I've never seen such hardcore dedication to not only knowing the process for the regulatory process, but also you had to know the technology. And that I can only imagine how challenging it was. So thank you for your dedication. Thank you for your servant's heart. And thank you for always treating me with respect. Appreciate that.
Yeah, Patrick, I appreciate everything you've done, not just for the commission, but for us at DIR as well. I know you've helped us out a lot, and I'm just grateful for everything that you've done and the working relationship that we've had together. You're going to be missed.
As a representative from Department of Sales Services, we've had the opportunity to work through some issues together, Patrick. And I agree with Commissioner Washington. Your style and your collegial attitude is always great. And I will miss you personally as someone who I interact with a lot at CSEC. So thanks for your service and all the best in retirement.
Congratulations on your retirement. Excuse me. And everyone at the PUC wishes you the best of luck.
See there, even your former folks. I don't know if that's good or bad. You are happy to see him go. Well, anyway, no, this is a good day. I'm sorry. Great. All right. Well, at this time, we're going to do our requisite group picture, but I have a new idea this time. We'll have staff and Patrick come up here with us. We'll do it here as opposed to us going down there. All right. If y'all want to come on up, and Kelly, as emeritus, please come forward.
Back there. Back behind.
Remember, we may not be great at taking pictures, but we are great at answering 911 calls. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on Patrick's retirement? I think he'd like to say a little something here, so.
Well, Patrick Tyler, your former general counsel as of a few minutes, or as of the end of the day, I guess I should say. I'm going to hopefully get through this. My notebook. Well, I was going to start by when I was talking to Diane this morning, and I kind of convinced her not to come because I thought, well, this will be kind of embarrassing. I'm not really not terribly self-absorbed, and this is kind of feeling that way, so I'm a bit uncomfortable to begin with. I've never needed a microphone, as everyone knows. My voice pretty well carries. But I was going to start, and I was like, well, I'll just keep it to me from not getting emotional, make it funny. And Diane goes, but you're not funny. I'm like, that's true. And then my opening line was going to be, and the chairman kind of took that one there. It was like I was going to start with, as everyone who knows me, I'm a person of few words. There we go. Thank you. But I did. I just wanted to take a moment, and I really, really appreciate all the kind words and thoughts and everything. They mean an awful lot to me. It's been a privilege of my career having served for this commission. Grab some water. Yeah. I'm not an emotional person. But I wanted to thank you for the opportunity and the privilege that started with Executive Director Paul Millett. He was quite, I don't think he's here, and he was quite everything. He was an ex-Navy captain, and everything that you could embody and all that you think about what you would expect a Navy captain to be, he was that. And it meant an awful lot. My early period, let me grow, helped me grow greatly. But the board in itself, they've always been supportive of the General Counsel ever since I came here and continue to do so today. I think we have without disparaging any prior boards or commissions, I think we have the finest one that in my time that we've had. And I sincerely mean that. As Chairman can attest to, we had in our early days, we struggled to even get quorums at times, which is, not saying anything when you have a 12-member quorum and only 3 of whom generally live in town. People are coming from far distances, particularly Commissioner Washington. So I've always admired that volunteer commitment to state service. I was getting paid. You folks were just doing it for the benefit and for the purpose of serving the state. So I always commended all the commissioners, but in particular this board, I was really, really am impressed with. And I just can't say anything more about just how much I admire the board and the commissioners. And when I first came on, James, I got to single you out simply because we had a relationship and you made me feel comfortable and staunchly supportive of the role of the General Counsel from the very beginning. And I don't know if at the time I really understood and appreciated just how much having the support of the board, not just the executive director, but having support of the board, meant to filling out the role of General Counsel. Because I jokingly say, but only half jokingly, I was the first one. So you never knew if you actually had a good one. You might find out now. So I hope it still stays that way. But I wanted to single out James because you have just been such a staunch supporter of this agency, 911, poison control, telemedicine pilot project. Just a host of things. There was never, ever a more committed and stalwart supporter of 911 in this agency than Commissioner Beecham. And that I say without qualifying in any shape or way. And I know that there's been some fine representatives, but James, you always had the interest of the state, this agency. You can't ask for anything more than that. I always appreciated that. Also, thank you, Richard. I didn't know you were going to do that, but I appreciate it very much. You've always been quite the colleague and a friend. And yes, my wife too recalls, oh, you on the phone with Richard, weren't you? And I was like, well, yes. And she goes, yeah, I could always tell. And this was before, we wouldn't even be on speaker. She goes, yeah, I could hear him. I was like, yeah. But we always had our moments. I don't want to say we were ever disagreeable, but we were always agreeable with one another, even if we disagreed about things and it was, I've said, and I've always meant this, Richard has probably forgotten more 911 than I ever knew. And I mean that. And when he retired, I said, it's like you can go anywhere in this country and just name drop a single name. And if it's in a 911 community, you don't have to say anymore. They know who you're talking about. And that's just not in the state. That's throughout the nation. That literally is commendable for all the things that you've done. So happy that you're now a commissioner, as our new general counsel, Kenny Morley, can attest to. It's like, yeah, that's just like for me. It was like having you around for all these years. It made it comfortable. Right? I knew it was like, hey, if I needed to find something or needed to ask something, I knew Richard would have opinions about it, well thought out opinions. And I say, You've forgotten more than I've ever probably learned, but you never forget anything. So it's always there. I mean, heck, just the other day, I think we were talking again, and it was something I asked him about that went back a number of years, and goes, "Oh yeah, this is what occurred back then." I was like, "Oh yeah, that is what occurred." So I am starting to ramble, and I apologize for that. I also want to thank all of our program stakeholders, our RPCs and RPCCs, you folks who know me from the back of my head mostly all these years, but I've worked closely with a lot of you and everything, and I've always appreciated all of your dedication and the time and commitment you've given to me, oftentimes doing somewhat thankless tasks, important ones. Anybody who's here doing FCC stuff, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's coming up, by the way, so be kind with Kenny, all right? That annual information collection is coming back around again, so please be kind just like you were to me. I appreciated that very much. And most of all, wanted to thank staff, the current and past staff. I've worked with a wonderful group of people. I think this current staff now is just exceptional, and I really mean that. I would call out some folks, but then I'd leave out some folks. So I know you know how I feel about you and all the work that you guys do. And I know the commission is in such good hands. I mean, really, really good hands. And I think that's also a testament to our new executive director, Andrew Friedrichs. Just in the short time I've worked with you, I've learned. I mean, it's been a new experience even, just, that perspective that you bring to things, and not challenging me in a bad way or anything like that, but, making me rethink. I was like, things long held that I've, held, and it's like, oh yeah, but this is way 10 years ago. It's like, well, is that still true? It's like, well, let me think about that again. Yeah. So definitely brought, I think Kelly said, that renewed energy, or other folks have had it, brought that in here. And I really know that the commission is in such fine hands with you as the leading as the executive director. And I wanted to also single out a couple of folks in particular, and I know Kelly's going to know who I'm talking about. I'm so sorry, guys. Kelly was just, her and Sue Seed, who recently retired, those folks just simply made me a better attorney. I knew that anytime I went into a room with them, if I wasn't well prepared, that was not good. Not that they would take exception to it, but I just knew I had to rise to their level at all times, regardless of what it was. And so you and Sue, just absolutely. I mean, just, they were so dedicated, so smart, so committed. And just, I've told staff in the past, if you ever, Kelly's ability, and I know the chairman is certainly well aware of her and the rest of the commission, her extemporaneous speaking is just unbelievable. I mean, and a testament to her style, but also just she was that always well informed. I mean, I've watched numerous committee hearings and everything, and I've sat in with several of them at times, in committees that weren't even necessarily related to 911 per se, as you recall back a few times, and it just always amazed me that whatever the question came, she was calm, cool, and collected, and just gave exactly what was needed, full disclosure and all that in a professional way, concise, unlike myself. But I was always just very impressed with those two, and they just made me such a better attorney. Sue, unfortunately, is not here today, but she knows. She too and I had our conversations like Richard and I, because my wife would go, "You're either talking to Sue or you're talking to Richard." I knew it, one way or the other. It was one of those two. And I think that's all I can say. It's just been really a privilege and an honor. And this is just to end on an inside joke. And Stacy and some of the folks is like, I know I'm not going to get to keep my parking, which is going to kill me when it comes to football next year. Speaking of, I may have been from Oklahoma, but I'm a UT diehard Longhorn, so hook 'em horns. But I am expecting lifetime fax and shredding services, okay? I'm expecting that one. And with that, I do thank you all from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate it.
Patrick, thank you as always. And FYI, when you do it today, we don't really think of as long-winded because we actually understood what you were talking about. Most of the time we don't. That's why it gets kind of rough. But All right, Andrew, with the retirement of Patrick, brings on the introduction of a new face.
We sure do. Some big shoes to fill after that. So it is with a great pleasure and honor to introduce our new general counsel, Kenny Moreland. He comes to the agency after serving for 7 years as an assistant general counsel to the governor, primarily supporting the economic development and tourism office in its effort to keep Texas the top state for business in the country. Before joining the governor's office, he spent 4 years with the Office of the Attorney General in the Open Records Division. He received his undergrad and his Juris Doctor from the University of Texas at Austin. So we kept some continuity there for you, Patrick. So I don't know if you want to stand, Kenny, and just give a little wave here to our folks so everyone knows who you are. There we go. Look at that.
Kenny, welcome to the agency. Like he said, you've got big shoes to fill. But he and Patrick have been running the transition program there, and thank you for both of you for what you've done in that process for the continuity of this agency. Thank you again. Andrew, you've got your legislative update.
Alrighty. So we've had so obviously the legislature here started about 2 weeks ago. The budgets have been released. So I'm going to read some notes here because there's been kind of a lot going on. First off, the agency did receive some initial good news. The Senate and House both filed their base budgets, SB1, HB1, last week. Both chambers have included the 2 911 related exceptional items within their base budgets, which for all intents and purposes means that those items have been accepted into our FY 26-27 budget. Request number 1 was for the additional $5 million in general revenue dedicated 50/50, which is a portion of the $22.2 million transfer of general revenue from the Broadband Infrastructure Fund. Request number 2 was for the now dissolved Howard County ECD revenue to be appropriated to the agency for disbursement to Permian Basin Regional Planning Commission, which came out to about $380,000 over the biennium. Barring any major developments, the commission will most likely have all available financial resources to fully fund the COGS FY 26-27 strategic plan budget requests with the standard caveat around eligibility, allowability, reasonability, those things. In addition, the agency will continue its plan to level out our equipment replacement schedule and will work with the regions accordingly. That leaves our 2 remaining requests up for deliberation. The first being our $2 million request for improvements to the Texas Poison Control Network and the group change for the executive director position. I speculate that the 2 911 related requests were included because the broadband infrastructure one involved the constitutional amendment that happened after the last session. And the second one is considered a net neutral revenue change between defunct ECD and the COGS. So it's more of a shifting of hands. Whereas the other 2 requests are more seen as a program expansion, which is typically left up to the budget committees to deliberate in during session. So next steps, I'm actually scheduled to testify tomorrow in Senate Finance Committee on our budget and should be receiving a similar invitation from House Appropriations Committee once those assignments are made in the following weeks. As for the budget process itself, once the budget committees in both chambers finish up their work, the Senate will advance a committee substitute to the floor. The chambers switch off every biennium. So if you remember, our budget the current biennium is HB1. So next year or next session or next biennium will be SB1. The Senate will advance it to the floor. They'll be able to add floor amendments, vote on it, and then essentially the Senate will deliberate and vote and send it off to the House chamber. The House will receive SB1 from the Senate. They'll make their own revisions, send it back to the Senate, at which point both chambers will announce a conference committee to work out their differences. And if all goes well, we should have an engrossed budget sometime in May. So, any questions?
They might not have any differences at all and wouldn't even have to worry about it. All right, we're going to move on to our 2025 performance measures and some fancy new sheets in these packets.
Yes, so we've been kind of messing around with our formatting here a little bit. I'm a visual person, if y'all haven't picked up on that yet. So we're kind of trying to come up with a new format for how we display our key performance measures. So if anybody wants any changes or sees something that we like, we'd be happy to take that into consideration. Within our 911 program, of note, we had 596,000 number of calls received by PSAPs. We have a target of about 2.8 million calls, so that puts us For our first quarter at about 22%. So pretty much on track. It's still got 3 quarters to go here. And then within our poison control program, of note, again, our total number of poison control calls processed statewide was a little over 100,000. Our target there is about 491,000. So again, that puts us at about 20% of our call volume for the year. Again, our average cost per call is extremely low. As you can see, our target's about $25.69, and right now it's hovering at about $13. This typically relates to just lag in reimbursement from when the poison control centers submit their costs to us to get paid. So that number will most likely increase across throughout the fiscal year. So, any questions on that? And thank you, Maddie, for our lovely new format. I appreciate your help on that.
All right. That being said, we'll move on to item number 2, which is the proposed internal audit plan for fiscal year 2025. And I believe we have Garza and Gonzalez here for that presentation, our audit firm.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm Kim Lopez Gonzalez, representing Garza Gonzalez and Associates, the CPA firm that performs the internal audit services for this agency. I'm here this morning to present to you the results of the risk assessment that was performed for this agency for fiscal year 2025, which resulted in the internal audit plan that you have included in your board packet. I'd like to thank management for their cooperation and oversight over this process. They provided all information in a timely and an efficient manner. And I'd also like to thank the presiding officer, members of the audit committee that also participated as part of the risk assessment process. We do realize that we do need your input to perform this risk assessment to provide an audit plan to you as the commission. I don't intend to go through the full report, but the internal audit plan that we are recommending for fiscal year 2025 can be found on page 5 of our report to you. And in addition to completing the risk assessment and preparation of this internal audit plan for fiscal year 2025, we are recommending, as part of the fiscal year 2025 internal audit program, to perform an audit of the 911 performance compliance monitoring area, the accounting and financial reporting area, to perform the follow-up of the prior year comments and recommendations that were not fully implemented as of fiscal year 2024. As part of the follow-up, we will also perform a limited procedures type of audit for the validation of fund balances. In addition to all those services that we will perform, we will also prepare the 2025 internal audit annual report that is required to be prepared on an annual basis and submitted to the State Auditor's Office and other agencies by November 1st of 2025. There are a couple of attachments in your report that provide to you the risk assessment summary found on page 6. This is just for information purposes so that you know that the risk assessment summary categorizes the potential audit topics as high risk, moderate risk, and low risk. There are 13 potential audit topics. 1 of them fell in the high risk area, 5 in the moderate risk, and 7 in the low risk. The areas that we are recommending for audit is the highest risk area and the highest risk area within the moderate risk area. We've had the opportunity to discuss this audit plan with Andrew and with management, got their feedback. They were able to inform the audit committee and get their feedback before we came to this morning to present to you this audit plan. So with that, I'd like to answer any questions that you may have in regards to our methodology that we used in the risk assessment process and the internal audit plan that we are presenting to you this morning.
Any questions for Kim? All right. Well, if there's no questions, then I guess at this time we would move or accept a motion to approve the 2025 internal audit plan.
Washington submits a motion to approve the audit plan.
Squirrel seconds.
There's a motion and a second, and there was almost a third over here again. We're doing good. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. The ayes have it. And thank you, Kim. We appreciate you. Look
Thank you.
forward to working with you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
At this time, Lorraine, if you'll come forward, we'll have our appropriation year 2025 financial update.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Lorraine Meek. I am your Chief Financial Officer. Please turn to page 18 of your Commission meeting notebook and follow along as we talk about our financial status as of December 31st, 2024. So far, a third of the year has gone by, and we are looking healthy. So let's talk about the top part is the expenditures. You may notice the number has changed from the last report. In the appropriations column, it says almost $81 million. That is the general appropriations of $64 million that we have for 25 specifically, plus the UB of almost 17 or a little over $17 million that came from 2024. Like, what year are we? Of that, 15 million was for the 911 grants that have moved from year 1 into year 2. And then a little over 780,000 for the poison grants that's also moved from year 1 to year 2. The expended and accrued, majority of them are our grants, and including the ones that you beat over. And then we have our obligations for our contracts and administrative contracts and payables and our staffing. Appropriation balance, as you can see, there's still $8 million that are currently available to hand out and obligate, of which 7.7 is GR related and in the 911 network operations and equipment replacement, which I believe we're going to hear a little bit about that later. Revenues, I will first speak to the total revenue column right in the middle. We have a little over $370,000 in prepaid wireless, 7.7 in regular wireless, and 960,000 in landline service fees, for a total of a little over $9 million in service fees alone. Additionally, we have a little over $4.8 million in equalization surcharge, for a total of $13.9 million of revenue as of December 31st. Now, as we compare that to the appropriation, it appears that we are underfunded, but with that, we'll use fund balance. And as you can see, we do have some appropriations that are still available as well for obligating. Now, as we speak to the revenues as total receipts and how we compare it to our biannual revenue estimate from the Comptroller's office, the Comptroller, the previous BRE is 49.861. Just this month, the Comptroller released the new BREs, in which it did increase surcharge by $312,000, but the service fee stayed the same for 2025. So as of print date, we were still using the old numbers. If we compare a third of the revenue BRE from the Comptrollers, we are expecting $16 million as of this point. We're at almost $14 million, so it appears that we're a little shy of linear revenues to date, but we're okay because as the years continue, the revenues should balance out, and historically, we are hitting the averages at this point in time, as we have historically received revenues as well. Now, fund balances, as I stated at the beginning, our legislators gave us the funds, and we are healthy for both surcharge and service fees. We will be able to maintain a balance and help fund the program going forward at this moment. This is informational. No actions are needed, but are there questions?
Any questions for Lorraine? If there's none, we appreciate it, Lorraine. Thank you. All right, at this time, we'll bring up Noah. And Noah is going to talk on 2 agenda items that are both informational for the commission. The first is the Next Generation 911 Service Fund Proposition 8 update. And then after that, he can move directly on into Next Generation 911 Fund and the federal grant program update. Noah?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. For the record, my name is Noah Gilliam. I'm your Director of Contracting and Purchasing for CSEC. If you'll direct your attention to pages 19 through 22 in your packet, the first staff report that we have up today is an update for Proposition 8, or state funding for NG 911. On page 20, I just want to briefly go over the status and give you some context to the numbers that are presented. So you'll see that on Chapter 772 ECDs that we have a total number of ECDs of 27, certifications received and accepted of 26. The difference there is Howard dissolved. And we also have Texas Eastern 911, who has yet to accept and provide a certification for their funding. You'll also notice that on the municipal ECDs, on column for Report 2, received and accepted, there's a variance there for both actually Chapter 772 ECDs and municipal communications districts. Again, the ECD portion, or the 772 portion of that, is because of Texas Eastern 911, because they haven't provided a report yet. As far as the municipalities, the difference is those entities either have spent their full allotment and provided everything they needed to in Report 1, or they just received the funding prior to the deadline for Report 2. I do want to report that Kilgore and Ennis have provided certification since the last time we spoke. So that is now included. We have distributed $134 million of the 155.2. The only remaining portion we have is, of course, Texas Eastern 911 for ECDs, and the State 911 program, which we are continuing to earn interest on. Your attachment for this shows the distribution amounts. I have now included this information for you, and it just shows the distributions that we've made, including the interest to each one of the districts. With that, this report is informational only, but I stand ready for questions.
You have a question? Okay. Any questions? All right. Well, Noah, let's move on to the federal grant update.
Thank you, Chair. If you will now turn to pages 23 through 30. Let's see how many we got here. 33. We reformatted a little bit of how we structured this report. We have now since added the table is now landscape, so to try to include all those comments for you. If you'll turn your attention starting on page 24, I just want to go over some variances that are not in your packet for some of these notes for some of these folks. So we have since learned that Henderson County 911 executed the remainder portions through a contract for NGCS of January 16th of this month. Then I want to point out Medina County 911 for the expenditures reimbursed amount of $476,329.29. There's a variance of $4,000 that we caught before distributing those funds out. It should be $4,000 less. We have the funding on our end, so when we go to report to the governor's office, it will wash out because the information is cumulative of every report. So we did make sure to distribute the correct amount of funding to them. Then for the city of Hutchins, we have learned that they are bringing a contract to city council on February 3rd of coming up here pretty soon. And then for the city of Portland, I want to report that we were reviewing a RFP for the city of Portland. That RFP has been posted. We reviewed and everything checked out. That RFP has been posted. Bids are due in late February, and the plan is to award by mid-March, from my understanding. Right above that for City of Plano, the award is pending City Council next month. With that, we are really close to matching the percentage of time elapsed with the percentage of expenditures. We are at 61%, 63% of time has elapsed. That brings our total reimbursed of $91.4 million out of the 155, or $150 million. Now a little bit of fun here. We've added if you'll turn your attention to attachment 2 on page 30, we wanted to provide kind of a snapshot overall for the state of where we are as far as progress for NG 911. So as it stands today, we have only 8 entities at the legacy maturity state, 19 are in foundational, 5 are in transitional, and 44 are in intermediate. That is a pretty large difference from where we started. We were at only 11% at the intermediate stage, and we are up to 58% of the state is at the intermediate state of maturity. Then lastly, I just want to talk quickly about a action that we took at the beginning of this month. We did send a letter out regarding a clause in each of the subrecipient contracts for obligation. The Treasury, as well as the Governor's Office and us, we tied in that December 31st, 2024 was an obligation deadline to obligate any and all funds. And as you may have heard just prior, that some of these folks have contracted after that date. We are currently reviewing all the submissions that we received from that request of meeting that deadline, and we will have an update for you in March at the March meeting. We're looking at a couple of options of how we can address those items. All the information in these reports are informational, but I do stand ready for questions.
Questions? Well, I'm glad you got the city of Portland taken care of, because this could have been a tough meeting for you if it hadn't been. All right. Well, Noah, we appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you for staying ahead. And we'll look forward to hearing from you on some of that at our next meeting. All right. At this time, Heather, we're going to recognize you to come up. We have 2 appointments that we have to make. The first is the Emergency Communications Advisory Committee and an appointment of Christine Hill.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Heather Barnes, Director of Programs. You would turn to page 34 in your notebooks. With Anita Pitts pending retirement at the end of this week, staff has requested and received a nomination from the Texas Association of Regional Councils. TARC recommends appointing Christine Hill to a term beginning February 1st, 2025 and expiring December 31st, 2026. Staff recommends that the Commission vote to appoint the above-named individual for the specified term to the Commission's Emergency Communications Advisory Committee.
Any questions for Heather? We'd entertain a motion.
So moved. Van Steenberg.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Scrove seconds.
There's a motion, second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. The ayes have it. Heather, the next item is the notice of appointment of Angela Moya and Patty Davis to the Commission's 911 Strategic Alignment Committee and Legislative Working Group.
Correct. That's just also on the letter that we received from TARC was the vacancy that was filled or that was left by Anita's retirement or pending retirement for Angela to fill the vacancy on the Strategic Alignment Committee and Patty to fill the vacancy on the Legislative Working Group. Patty is with the West Central Texas Council of Governments. She has 28 years at the COG. And Angela is with the Golden Crescent Regional Planning Commission. She has 23 years in public safety and 5 years at the COG. So we will welcome them to those committees, and there's no action required on these. It's just a notice.
Okay. All right. Then we will move on to the next item, and that is our update on the CSEC State 911 Program Information Security Assessment Services. Kimber? Just for the note, it took 3 people to replace Anita. Think about that.
Good morning. My name is Kimber Snoddy. I'm the contract manager here at CSEC. So over the past several months, we've been working with the 18 participating RPCs to get contracts executed with DIR. And I'm happy to report all 18 have a contract established. So the first step of this is completed for all of them. On page 37 and 38, you'll see a table that that shows the status of each of those RPCs. The 4th column labeled TCF kickoff date. If there's a date there, that signifies that RPC is actively working through the TCF assessment. So we've got about half of them on the schedule with AT&T. Additionally, you'll notice that we don't have penetration testing and vulnerability scanning listed on here. We're still working with the call handling equipment providers to confirm we can run those. And this is informational only. I'm here for questions.
Any questions? Thank you all again. This is great. Everybody's signed up and ready to go. And Wayne, thank you to your folks over at DR. This is a great program. Jessica, you're up next. We have our Regional Planning Commission Strategic Plan Amendments request for additional funding.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Jessica McLemore, 911 Program Manager. Please turn to page 39 for the request for general revenue. In anticipation of procurements for call handling equipment replacements in the next fiscal year, staff have initiated 3 requests to amend approved strategic plans for FY25 with requests for general revenue and include Deep East Texas in the amount of $836,864, Southeast Texas in the amount of $1,360,381, and Texoma in the amount of $504,042. Staff have also initiated 6 plan amendments for the replacement of recorders in the next fiscal year and include Alamo area, Alamo area in the amount of $192,000, Arctex in the amount of $228,000, Concho Valley in the amount of $456,545, Deep East Texas in the amount of $144,000, Golden Crescent in the amount of $180,000, and Southeast Texas in the amount of $60,000. Staff recommend that the Commission approve the strategic plan amendment request for additional funding as presented in the staff report and authorize its executive director to revise and execute with each of the affected RPCs the recipient 911 cost summary. And I'm ready for any questions.
Any questions? Then we would accept a motion to approve.
Muscat, motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Ben Steenberg will second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. The ayes have it. And we will move on to our last agenda item. Patrick Corley, if you will come forward. We're going to have a presentation today from the Texas Alliance on Texas 911 with a funding report that they did. And Chip, I think you kind of wanted to, that we've got some districts here with us today, and I think you were wanting to ask them to stand up and be recognized so we could kind of see who they are.
Yes. If any of the members of the Alliance are representing in a district here, if you'll just please stand up and just wanted to show this is one of the most, this is the most important project for the Alliance over the last few years, and so we wanted to be present today. Thank you.
Chip, you didn't stand up. You were supposed to stand up too. All right. We appreciate all of you being here for this as well. And Patrick, at this time, we'll turn it over to you.
How about now? Oh, definitely working. Good morning. My name's Patrick Corley. I'm the Executive Director of Brazos County 911 District, providing 911 service to the Bryan College Station area. I'm here today to speak to you in my role as chairman of a group called the Texas 911 Alliance. It's an interlocal cooperation entity composed of the 27 emergency communications districts located throughout the state. And I do have some presentation material that's included in your packet. I think it starts on page 41, if I'm not mistaken. It would be helpful to have those on the ready because I will be referencing that material as I go through my presentation. The 27 districts in the state vary greatly in terms of population. On the small side, we have a district that has just under 20,000 population, and then it ranges all the way up to a population north of 6 million in Greater Harris County, which is one of the largest 911 networks in the country. As you can see noted on my information in red, shows the areas the district covers. We cover 76% of the population of Texas in terms of 911 service. Our mission as an alliance is to improve 911 service in Texas through collaboration, innovation, and advocacy. The directors of the districts meet on a monthly basis, typically in Houston or to Dallas. Sometimes we'll venture out to other parts of the state. But we share information. We get updates on regulatory and legal issues that may impact us as 911 entities. And then we also work cooperatively on projects. And that's the reason I wanted to talk to you guys today is one of those projects. So on the next slide, it's titled Wireless Service Fee. That deals with the Alliance's project to raise the wireless service fee from 50 cents to 75 cents. And we're going to go into a little bit of the reasoning why as we go through this presentation. The wireless 911 fee, as I'm sure you know, has been at 50 cents since its inception in 1997. And As you can see there on the chart on the left, we've kind of bounced that 50 cents against the consumer price index. And essentially it says that, a given amount of goods and services that cost 50 cents in 1997 to buy those same goods and services today would cost 98 cents. So essentially twice the price. And so obviously costs to provide 911 service have increased greatly since 1997. We're not just talking about the specialized equipment, networks, and computers and stuff that are required for 911. We're talking about the general cost of doing business, wages and insurance, facility costs, utilities. All those have increased dramatically since 1997. At the same time, our fee revenue has continued to decline, and it's done so in combination with the decreased buying power that's illustrated over on that chart on the left related to the consumer price index. So all that is to say is that 1997 revenue simply cannot fund 2025 911 systems. So to that end, on the next page, we've worked as an alliance to advance wireless fee legislation over the last 2 legislative sessions. We've made some progress on that front, haven't been quite able to get it pushed across the finish line just yet, but we're going to give it another go this session. Our goal is simple. We want a sustainable, long-term source of revenue to maintain and advance 911 in Texas. And unlike the state system or some of the municipal districts, ECDs rely almost exclusively on 911 service fees to fund our operation. And we found that over time, Texans have abandoned their traditional landline phones over the last 20 years. And so wireless service fees have become the primary source of revenue for our districts. We do have the ability, as you know, to vary the rate of our fees on landlines and voice over IP lines where we don't have the ability to change the wireless rate. But in order to make ends meet, many districts have increased the rates on those wireline and voice over IP lines. And it's created this disparity between what people pay on a wireline versus a wireless device. And so we feel like those higher landline and voice over IP fees unfairly impact a particular group of people. That's primarily businesses and elderly. They're the main customers that we still see on a traditional landline. And so raising the wireless fee will do a couple of things. It will allow some of our districts to lower those fees that we have on traditional landline and voice over IP lines, but more importantly, it will generate the necessarily long-term funding that's needed to advance reliable 911 service in Texas. And one other thing to point out on this slide are the 2 devices pictured here. We have a yellow rotary phone and an Apple Watch. And so those represent the technology change that I've seen over my career in 911. And we've had to do a lot of things to adapt to accept calls from these devices. So obviously they're both capable of making 911 call. The Apple Watch can do it on your behalf. It will call automatically if you take a hard fall, has the ability to pass along additional information, medical history, emergency contacts, give you updated location information as it moves. And we've had to adapt our 911 system to be able to accept the kind of information that these devices are capable of providing. Now, I don't know what type of device will be developed over the next 10 or 20 or 30 years, but we know that we will have to adapt as 911 to be able to keep up with the technology that's available to the public. And we need to be prepared from a financial standpoint to do that. All right, so as an alliance, we feel like we have a pretty good case and some good reasoning behind why we are proposing to raise the wireless fee from 50 cents to 75 cents. But we wanted to get a second opinion. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Rob Grace. He's the primary author of a study that was performed at Texas Tech University. We asked them to assess the adequacy of our current 50-cent wireless fee and do some public opinion polling, gauge Texan support for an increase to 75 cents. So I've listed out several of their key findings on my slide here, as well as a chart illustrating one of their public opinion polls that shows overwhelming support. 78% of Texans would support raising the fee on 911 wireless devices from 50 cents to 75 cents. But I want to give him the opportunity to kind of go over the results of his study. He's moved on to the University of Cincinnati. He's come all the way from Ohio today to give you a brief overview of his findings. The full report, I believe, is in your notebook, and I'll give it Dr. Grace an opportunity to give an overview of his study, and then I'll wrap things up and we'll answer some questions for you. Dr. Grace?
Thank you very much. Hello. It's a privilege to be here today in front of the commission. Yes, my name is Rob Grace. I'm representing the authors on the report, which include Drs. Wesley Wedd and Changwan Sun from Texas Tech, as well as Hyung-Suk Na from the University of Missouri. So it was a collaborative effort. I understand that the report has been shared. If not, I'd be happy to share it with you. I just wanted to highlight a couple of our findings. The report involves three parts. The first is a analysis of Texas 911 cost and revenue. We looked at the filings by this commission with the FCC using publicly available data to look at costs and revenue. The second part was a comparison of the Texas 911 wireless fee with wireless fees in other states. And the third part is the public opinion survey. And I'll focus on that last part. I think it's I'm sure the commission is very familiar with the cost and revenue information. And the second part, however, in our comparison of the Texas wireless fee with those in other states, we've noted that Texas has one of the lowest wireless fees, and among states with a single statewide wireless fee, Texas is unique in that the wireless fee has not changed since 1997, whereas other states have adjusted their fee to address the changes in conditions that we've discussed. I want to note that the high-level finding of the third part of the report, the public opinion survey, was that overall 78% of Texans support an increase to the 911 wireless fee from 50 cents to 75 cents. And we looked at that support across the different demographic groups that are represented among our survey respondents. And those survey respondents generally match the profile of Texans across the state. So we have 78% who supported or identify as supporting an increase to the wireless service fee. 11% said they would not be in support, and 11% were unsure. And so we also asked people, our respondents, demographic questions related to, for example, political affiliation. We noted that Democrats and Republicans, overwhelming majorities, were equally likely to support an increase to the wireless fee. We looked at support across groups that were aware of the current wireless fee and those who were not. And again, support was widespread across those groups. 77% of people who were aware of the wireless fee fixed to their mobile service plan supported the increase, and 78% of those who were unaware of the fee also supported the increase. We also looked at people who had previously contacted 911 and those who have not. And again, support for the fee increase was widespread across those groups. 78% and 77% of people who'd contacted or not contacted 911 were supportive of an increase, respectively. In addition, we asked people about their opinions and perceptions of 911 service in the state. As we expected, most people were not really very favorable, but recognize that 911 service is critically important to the welfare of the state and their family and friends. Overall, 94% of respondents reported that upgrading 911 services was either somewhat important, or critically important. So that left just 6% of people who felt that 911 services and upgrades to 911 services were not, quote, not at all important. I note that 6% just because the 11% of people who reported that they would not be in favor of a fee increase, interestingly, come from that group. So one of the interesting findings of the survey was that the minority of people who would oppose a potential fee increase were also disproportionately represent those people, the minority of people who did not consider that upgrading 911 service would be important. This is just to emphasize that our overall findings were widespread support for a fee increase, and that this support cuts across the demographic groups that we surveyed in our the public opinion survey conducted in October of last year. So I'm happy to take any questions, and I would like to say again it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Grace. If you'll turn to the last slide, there's one last topic I'd like to address, and that's to talk a little bit about CSEC's Rider 9 plan report. It also supports our goal of a sustainable long-term revenue source for 911 in Texas. And you see I listed a few snippets I took out of that plan. It states that Texas must have sufficient and predictable funding for 911. I think we can all agree on that. That new technologies, population growth, and inflation all contribute to increased costs, which we discussed earlier in the presentation, and also states that the current 50-cent fee is insufficient to ensure reliable 911 service. And so if you look at that CSEC Rider 9 report, the study from Texas Tech, as well as what we believe are our needs as an alliance, you see not only broad consensus there, you see pretty much a total alignment and total agreement of kind of where we are from a 911 wireless fee perspective and where we need to be in order to get appropriate funding for our future needs. So the reason I'm here today is to ask for your support as a board and as an agency for our efforts, primarily by helping us to educate lawmakers and citizens on our efforts. I understand that the support that you can provide as a state agency is somewhat limited when it comes to requesting fee increases of this nature. So we'd ask, as representatives may contact you, it seems likely as Commission on State Emergency Communications that you may be their first phone call, that try to educate them, and if nothing else, refer them to the Alliance leadership team. I'm happy as chairman of the Alliance to talk to any representatives or citizens to answer questions about our efforts. Our vice chairman, Scott Calderwood, out of El Paso, or our secretary, Nathan Kaiser, out of the Lubbock area. Also, all three of us are happy to take questions from our representatives or citizens about our efforts. One other thing is I ask you to stay up to date on our website, texas911alliance.org. We've got all the information that you've heard here posted on that page, along with a link to download the full study from Texas Tech. We'll continue to update that website as we go through the legislative process, have things like bill numbers and sponsors. So those kind of interesting in tracking our progress over the next few months, that's a good place to look. But I want to thank you guys for having us, listening to our presentation, giving us the opportunity to put this information out in the public realm. And we'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Other than that, I look forward as Alliance members to working with CSEC over the next several years to advance 911 in the state of Texas for our citizens. Thank you. Any questions?
We appreciate you being here today at this time. Okay, it looks like we've got a couple questions there. Go ahead.
Yep. Following up on the point you mentioned about the commission could potentially be a legislative resource to the legislator on information, you mentioned that you took the FCC filing numbers, and I made the mistake of not reading the report carefully enough, and I started looking at the FCC filing numbers and realized that the numbers in the report are inflation adjusted. Is that a normal thing that's done in these kind of studies, or could you explain that just a little bit?
Certainly. Yes, and you're correct. We adjusted for inflation the cost and revenue data that's publicly available from the SEC as filed by the commission and those bodies from other states. And we adjusted, made those adjustments in order to have a apples to apples comparison across the years, starting from when the data was first available in 2008 to the most recent report in 2022. And so for the reasons that were outlined about the buying power of 50 cents from 1997 to now, in order to have a fair comparison between these years, we adjusted for inflation.
And you adjusted both the revenues and the expenses, so the delta stayed basically the same between them, but in nominal dollars, our costs have actually gone up more, but it was inflation adjusted, so it was to make it apples to apples, like you said.
Correct, yes. Precisely.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Not a question, but a couple of comments. First, I really appreciate the fact that, thank you for the opportunity to make this presentation. I think it's important to note that in spite of the alignment that the Alliance has with CSEC, excuse me, as far as our overall mission and our funding baseline funding source, there are differences in the structures of these two types of organizations that create different pressure points. So the CSEC, lives or dies by the appropriation process, and the districts have not, and the last couple of sessions have been involved in the appropriation process, and we don't see it as a good fit. We're having trouble dedicating ourselves to long-term contracts for service when we're not sure when and if additional revenue is going to come. So that's why we want to shore up the traditional method that has worked for us for 30 years. And it is procedurally easy. I know it's not politically easy, but it's procedurally easy to adjust that fee on a occasional basis, rather than for us to go through the appropriation process every session. And second, just to understand that the great financial news that we get here from our team at CSEC talks about the state program. And so CSEC is a trusted voice at the Capitol for all things related to 911 in the state of Texas. So I want the message to be the state program is funded. The legislature has done a good job through that appropriation process. It hasn't always been the case. I know in the past that's been a tough process. But as far as the state program goes, we're in good shape. The rest of the 911 system is still looking for that long-term sustainable funding source out there. And as this opening slide deck mentions, 76% of Texans get their 911 service through an emergency communication district. So I don't want the message to get mixed up that 911 funding has been taken care of. It has at the state level for the state program, but for everyone else, we're still looking for that long-term funding source.
Well, it's always an issue. Every 2 years, it's an issue, even for us. I do think as I read through this, and I went through it, I guess in a lot of those comparisons, though, we're not taking into account the ARPA and Prop 8 funds. And y'all did get a lot of that too. So the majority of it came here, went out there. So I do think that's important to remember as we look at this, just because when you're going across the street there and talking to those folks, you never want to not give thanks for what you've gotten. So that's the important part. But the other thing that I read in this, and I think there were a lot of similarities between what y'all have and our Rider 9. I get Proposition 8 and Rider 9 mixed up. There were a lot of similarities there, but one thing that stood out to me in both of them are the FEC reports. And I would say this because there are a lot of y'all with the districts here today. I know that's always a thing every time around when Patrick's done that. And he's probably going to walk out of here and throw his hands up in there and go, yeah, I don't have to do another one of them. That we have trouble getting districts to respond because they feel like, oh, damn, it's CSEC trying to get all in our business, trying to get this information from us. But that's the very information you are using to put this report together. We're not doing it to be punitive. We're doing it because we're required as the state agency to collect that information and submit it to the FEC. So I would hope that the districts, this go round, I have the feeling poor Kenny's going to be having to start this sooner than later, will remember that when they get those requests for information. Any other questions? We appreciate both of you being here. Ohio, that was a pretty long trip there. So again, we appreciate you being here. Thank you again. At
Thank you
this
for your time.
time, do we have any other business before the commission? I don't believe we do. If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Scroll seconds.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Patrick, happy retirement. Thank you.